Hi guys, welcome to my channel ID Guru. I'm Anura and today we are going to learn about some checkpoints for an ID. As you can see on my screen, this is a checklist which I have used previously in my career. So you can create one for yourself or use any one that is available on the internet. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you do a thorough check of everything before you send it for development. So we have learned different processes which are followed by an instructional designer for creating their learning modules. But what is it that you should keep in mind? So let's go through this one by one. As you can see on screen, this is a checklist for an ID. ID writers are junior writers, so senior writers, lead IDs, different positions that you will hear of. But what is important is that you design your document properly. So what happens is sometimes if you receive a document like this, or you receive a checklist, or you yourself are a lead and you want to create a checklist, then what is it that you should include? So basically, one is metadata. Metadata is something that is entered into the LMS or which is used for basically identifying your module. So as you can see on screen, the educational level, that is this for an undergraduate course? Is it for a postgraduate? What is the name of the course? Is there a prerequisite? Learning objectives. Now remember Bloom's taxonomy. So that is what is to be used here. So learning objectives, then the name of the instructional designer. If there is any supervisor, then their names. A very short introduction, like don't like big essays, just one or two lines. And LO sequence means this means learning object. So learning object is synonymous with module. So a small module because learning objects are typically very small. So you don't create a really big ones like half an hour, 1 hour. Rather in today's time, that is like a taboo because the human attention span has gone really down and micro learning is the in thing in today's time. So a learning object sequence means basically a module if you want it. If you don't want it, just skip it. So anything that should be seen by your user before they see your current module. So an LO for a prior viewing and an LO for a future viewing. So basically you're creating a timeline for them, timeline or a view line. Let's call it that. That's a much better word. So a view line for your audience, that is something that they don't need to worry about now. You are doing the job for them, right? So we covered metadata. Then, if you are creating an animation, then these are some things that you should look at. That is, has the alternating sequence of image instruction and instruction being followed. That is, if you are writing the storyboard for an animation, that is a 2D animation. We have seen how to write a storyboard. But as an ID, when you are now in your career, as you will climb the ladder, mostly you will not be scripting the storyboard. It will come to you for a review. So, as a reviewer, what is it that you look at? So, first is we saw metadata. Second is that now we are seeing in case you have an animation or there is some sort of a video that you want your developer to create. Then, are you following this? That is there an image on screen? And then there should be an instruction following that image. They should not be on two separate pages. Is this being followed? Also, is there an image or a diagram that is not labeled? You know, so because that's not going to make any sense. So in case that was forgotten, just send it back. Is there an image or an diagram that does not have any instruction or explanation regarding it? That is, it's a standalone thing. So never assume that your target audience has, is going to imagine everything or they are like, they're going to understand everything. If they did, why would they come to you? So basically, make sure that nothing is just left haywire anywhere. So these are some pointers. Always feel free to add to these or skip certain things if you think that life is good. So also, have you shown changes in your images in stages? That is, one by one, you have to show it steadily, gradually. Do not stuff everything onto one screen or one page. It is highly annoying for the developer. And in today's time of AI, if you yourself are going to do everything, imagine if you are in a situation where you don't understand the content. That is, ID people are we subject neutral, so anything can come to you. And imagine if a very complicated thing has just appeared in front of you, everything stuffed into one page. life is going to be hell. So basically, if it is split across different pages, it's going to be easier for you to develop it. Right now, all these different positions are getting crumbled into one. So understanding yourself only as the ID as well as the developer, make sure that you show changes in an animation or a video in stages. Also, the ID has title of the steps mentioned. That is, if you are going to put it into stages, then label each of them. That is, what is it that you are doing here? Is there any technical term? Basically, instructions for the animator because they don't understand any kind of a technical term. Animator, programmer, whatever it is that you want to call them. So technical terms, you know, make sure that you explain them. Don't just leave them there. Instructional design document or IDD is equal to storyboard. So basically, is there any technical term that needs an explanation? Please go ahead and do that. Also, abbreviations. Please include full forms. Again, don't leave it for interpretation or imagination. Very bad habit. Then if you have a graph then which needs to be displayed, have the minimum number of coordinates been specified to enable the animator to draw the graph properly. So basically, when your animator is going to simulate something, whether it is in engineering or in science, they need a minimum number of data points. Otherwise, they cannot simulate it. So please go down to that nitty gritty of detailing so that life is easier for your programmer. It's like when I had started my career, I was told that if your storyboard goes to your programmer and your graphic designer and doesn't come back to you with a query, then you're an excellent instructional designer because you have written the storyboard very, very well. So remember that as a thumb rule. Write your storyboard that well that your GD and your programmer has no question. So this basically checklist which you're seeing on screen is written with respect to science. That is why whichever example you see on screen is all to do with science. So you can skip the example, just keep the thought in mind. So if along with the graphs, if you have any kind of angles and any kind of viewpoints that you want to show on screen, please mention all of them because your programmer cannot imagine. I'm going on repeating them. I know it sounds irritating, but when it actually goes, live for the programmer to get started, it will be irritating for him or her if you don't pay attention here. So now, again, if an object is to be rotated, that is, if you're going in 3D animation, in that case, this becomes very, very crucial that you mention the angle of rotation. Okay, because otherwise, how do they do it? You have to mention every detail, also direction and angle. So if you're saying that go in the north direction in this particular and show this angle. So what is this? So write that also to that much of detailing that say 30 degrees from base. I'm just giving random examples. Basically, write every detail. So, is there any element for which it is mandatory to have some color? So, color schemes is also something which the ID has to specify. Many times it goes along with branding guidelines. So, if your client is very particular about their branding colors, then make sure you specify it. Then has the approximate time duration in seconds for each image or action or to be displayed on screen? Is it mentioned? So, how long are you supposed to show an animation on screen? Because you're supposed to progress ahead. And mostly this will be in seconds. It can't possibly be in minutes. So, are you even specifying that? Have you included interactivity? Have you mentioned again detailing of all of this? We have covered the session on different types of interactivities. So have you mentioned each of these in detail? And if there is an interactivity, then has the output of user interactivity been mentioned? What it means is that not only telling the programmer which interactivity is to be included, but if the user clicks on XYZ, then what has to happen? If they click on ABC, then what has to happen? And if they don't click, if they leave the screen idle for whatever reason, if they are confused or they didn't understand, then what do we do? Do we just leave the screen blank? So all of this has to be mentioned in your storyboard. Third is that your offline support, that is basically your glossary or your references. Have you mentioned all of these things in your storyboard, definitions and keywords? Because if you're going to use certain terms in your learning module, then it better be there in the beginning, the meaning of it. And never rely on the user's memory to, go back and recall, okay, what did this mean? Because it's going to have references here. So better just include definitions. And references do give it in the end. That is what is it that they should go and read up later. So references, definitions, always. And standard format, if you follow anything, that is, if you go in this order of books, websites, and research papers, if you bother going in this order, if you don't, then again skip it. But do have your glossary and references. And of course, last but not the least, your questionnaire, that is your assessment. So when you are having an assessment, remember that we have formative and summative, two types of assessment. So at least have you had five MCQs, that is multiple choice questions. In the end, that is, if you're going to take a summative assessment, you're going to try and understand whether your user has understood something from your module or not. If you put just two questions, it could just be trial and error. So what is it that you're grading from that? So at least have five MCQs in the end, or have the answer keys to each question being given. So sometimes it happens, trust me. I mean, this may sound silly, but it does happen. That is, IDs, when they are scripting an entire storyboard, it's all there in your mind. But when you're writing it down, you're typing, at that time you tend to skip it because it's there. So you imagine it. It's there on screen type of a thing. And you just move ahead. So instead of saying that, okay, option B is the correct option, sometimes just putting that tick there, you can tend to forget it. So as the reviewer, you will check all of this. That has the correct answer been given? Have you given feedback for each of this? That is, has the explanation to the answers to be displayed as feedback with the correct answer? Is it given? Not just that you're right or wrong. I mean, so what? You're supposed to tell them what went right or wrong. So even if they are right, mind you, do tell them, like, re-emphasize on what is it that went right. And is there at least two questions that the learner will need to apply of the knowledge learned? So when you are creating different types of questions, I will take a different session on assessment. So there are a zillion type of questions that you can create. All of them need not be of recall. Remember Bloom's taxonomy? I had told you that assessment questions are always mapped to learning objectives. So always at least have two questions which go into application and above. Okay, so why you're doing this is because you're not just relying on the user's memory, you're also seeing whether they will be able to apply this or not, right? So make sure that you look at all of these as an ID whenever you are scripting your storyboard. And as a reviewer, you will look at this with even more minute detailing when you're reviewing any storyboard. Because after you sign off, this will go for development. And once it goes for development, we don't have any scope for error. So make sure you do this bit real carefully. Okay, and one more thing which I have not mentioned here on screen, but it is understood, is that you read your voiceover script. So in your voiceover script and in the entire storyboard, no scope for grammatical errors. Grammatical check, it is called as a QA check. Usually that is done separately, but I would, as an ID, recommend that you take care of it here as well. Make sure that you go through the entire script as well as on-screen text. Whatever is written in the storyboard, is it grammatically accurate and correct? Okay, I hope this was helpful, and we will meet in the next session with a new topic. Till then, take care.